to get some responses to some of those questions. Who'd like to go first?
You, okay?
Yeah. Well, I'll instruct you that do.
Great. I guess that the questions really related to one of the ones that interested me is the idea of again coming back to this idea of the political implications of all this, and that there was a lady there who asked about, for instance, the transhuman project, which could, in the current way society is organised, lead to a tiered society. In a sense, we already have a tiered society where people have access to some things and other people are denied that. So that society is already with us in a way. Is there then, you know, something else here that human beings do, or can do, which is to look outside of themselves and their own immediate interests in order to put together political projects which reorganise things in order to make things possible. So we're not just stuck with two options, we've actually got limitless options. It just depends on how we want to organise things. But we could have quite complex societies. But it's up to us to decide what we want them to be and to say about organising that. I thought that there was an element of that in that question. There's also questions, I think, about changes. That was a very interesting question too, about the changes in human nature. Has it changed? Are we just the same as we were 2,000 years ago?
The more intelligent people are, the fewer children they have. That's been going on for a long time. So intelligent elites are not reproducing themselves. And this, the super intelligent people, in long follow-up studies, people whose IQs are 5 standard deviations above the normal, are hardly reproducing at all. Of course, there's very few of them. But what I'm saying is that people that are intelligent are not reproducing in the standard biological way. Okay? But they're not reproducing in the world of ideas either, because the standard intellectual view in the Western societies is a view that the intellectual view of Western societies has no particular advantage. The idea of multiculturalism, that all societies are equivalent and the same. So the standard intellectual view that is likely to be held by most people here is an incoherent view. Now, if we go back to some of the other questions, some of them are factual. Why do we have problems about enhancement technologies? I think that this is an incoherent view, that people, very, very few people actually live by the idea that enhancement technologies are bad. You would not be having any psychoactive drugs. You would not smoke. You would not drink tea or coffee. You would not use any way of shaping your mood or your emotions. You wouldn't be taking any psychoactive drugs. You would have a very different kind of lifestyle. So the fact that people are uncomfortable about things is not actually an intellectual argument. The idea of a tiered society, I think that the enhancement technologies in reality have precisely the opposite effect, in that it is much easier to boost somebody from a lower level to a higher level than to take people that are at the very highest level and boost them further. It's just a practical fact. That's how technologies work, that they equalise. And I think the fact that the intellectual elite of our society has problems about enhancement technologies is actually because they want to stay the intellectual elite. They don't want other people to start being able to move up towards themselves and give them more competition, fight for the same jobs and that kind of thing. So people may feel that they're being egalitarian by opposing enhancement technologies, but I think in practice it is actually the opposite. I think it stops people of a lower level of ability from having that lower level enhanced.
Yeah, just for now. And Igor, I wanted to ask you actually, because I do think there's a connection here. This question about has human nature changed? Because to me, it was something that was said in the last discussion. I think something that does connect these two positions here, that the ability to change your mind both as an individual, but also that, you know, in 2,000 years, people collectively have changed their minds about quite a lot of things, any number of things. All sorts of things still happen, but nevertheless, people have different views about that, and societies change their mind about these things. Is this something that, how does that work then, in terms of the idea of just, you know, the information machine?
I think one's got to be careful about terms there. And when I think of human nature, there are two aspects. The aspects that's most likely to change is what do humans actually do? What affordances are there in the world for them to lead their lives? Now that's changed tremendously in the last 2,000 years, and some scientific concepts have come in that didn't exist. And so our entire way of thinking about the world can have changed. But I'm not sure that that has a lot to do with a change in human nature. It takes a lot longer than 2,000 years to change the physiological substrate that enables us to think at all, and possibly that might enable us to change our level of competence, our intelligence. And it sort of links into an earlier question, and that is that people sometimes make claims about being able to change, for example, intelligence, to enhance intelligence through some either even sort of surgical means or some means of exposure. And in fact, if you read the papers this Sunday, you'll find that there's a whole lot of stuff about somebody who wrote a paper in Nature which says that through the presence of the web and the internet, as folk age, as long as they keep on using the web and the internet, they will retain their faculties much longer. I think that's absolute nonsense. The way to keep one's faculties is to keep one's mind active. Use it or lose it is terribly important, but using it on the internet or on the web well, these people claim to have done some experiments, and they've proved that people using the internet are really quite clever in their old age. But they can't do the other experiments and test what happens if you play cricket, or if you go cycling, or if you like doing crosswords. So I think technological enhancement is not necessarily to be believed. I have some answers to the other questions. I don't know whether you want me to get on to that.
You may, and then we'll go out again. I think
okay.
Time.
There was a very good question about phenomenology, which I think the essence of that question is absolutely right. But nowadays, if one thinks about models of consciousness, particularly informational models of consciousness, they would be phenomenal. But I'm not sure that David Chalmers would be all that interested in psychism, because it's taking things to a bit of an extreme.